I will now call to order tonight's meeting of the Evanston Preservation Commission. We have a quorum of 7 commissioners present. I'm sorry? We will have 8 commissioners present in a moment. The City of Evanston's Preservation Ordinance empowers this body to oversee and administer the community's historic preservation program. During our monthly public meetings, we encourage public participation, afford due process through public hearings on proposed landmark designations and applications for certificates of appropriateness, and discuss ways to advance long-range planning goals beyond case review. We ask anyone who wishes to address the commission to sign in and indicate the discussion item, designation, or application to be addressed. The first order of business tonight will be public comment on items listed under discussion on the meeting agenda. For old and new business, I will ask staff to read each case into the record. Once the case has been read into the record, the applicant presents an overview of the proposal, including evidence and testimony that support the applicable review standards being met. Commissioners will then ask questions of the applicant. Following the questioning period, members of the public may speak toward the application, keeping their comments to 3 minutes or less. Following public comment, the applicant will have the opportunity to respond to any evidence or testimony against the application as it relates to the review standards. The commission then closes the record and proceeds to deliberation and a motion to approve the proposal or approve with conditions. A simple majority of the quorum present is required for a motion to carry. After old and new business conclude, the commission considers the previous public meetings minutes and then discusses actions pertaining to long-range planning goals. The first order of business is public comment. Do we have anyone here to give a public comment? Do we have?
I didn't have anybody sign up. If anyone would like to speak, you can approach the podium and just state your name and address.
Do we have anyone who signed up online to speak?
No.
Okay. Do we have any comments in writing?
We do. We received one comment in writing.
Okay. This is a comment from someone who identifies as Native American. There are some Native American words in this comment that I am unfamiliar with, so I am going to do the best that I can to be respectful. Hello everyone. Black Otter is my name. David Sarah is my name. I am citizen Potawatomi, the people of the place of the fire, and I come from the Bear Clan. I am from Evanston. I am writing here to you all today to urge you to listen to my relatives of the Pokagon Band of Potawatomi. We Potawatomi have lived here on the coast of Lake Michigan since time immemorial. We call this land, and then there is a word that I don't know, land of Potawatomi. When our prophets brought us on our pilgrimage south through the Straits of Mackinac, we landed here in the arms of our beautiful sibling, Lake Michigan. The lake has provided for us and took care of us ever since. Generations upon generations have been buried here, lived here, were born here, loved it here. If you are unfamiliar with what I am telling you, you desperately need to be educated in the beautiful history of the land you govern. I tell you all this because I hope it will meet your heart and you will feel compassion for us Potawatomi peoples and all First Peoples of this land who have buried their ancestors in this soil. Please be compassionate here and take the time for a survey to be done. Our people died here just like yours, and we would like to take them home. In any case, there may be no grave sites and you can go on your way. Wouldn't it be better anyhow? Would you like to begin building and find my family's gravesite and have to halt the construction? Is this financial cost worth it? Is the ethical and moral cost worth it? Evanston, listen to your Native American constituents. We are still here and we still care. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Okay. Seeing none, we will move on to the next order of business, which is new business, and I'll just give Tom a second. We do have one commission member that needs to abstain. Okay. 23 Pres 022748 Judson Avenue, Lakeshore Historic District. Could staff please read this into the record?
Studio Tallow Architects, applicant on behalf of the homeowners, submit for a certificate of appropriateness to alter the home's west elevation fenestration, enclosing a basement window with brick to match existing, installing new windows and a door and new openings, and replacing 2 existing double-hung basement windows with egress windows at the home's rear volume, and enclosing a second-story double-hung window with brick to match existing at the home's east elevation. Applicable standards, alteration 1 through 10, and construction 3, 4, and 7.
Thank you. Could the applicant come forward and give us the presentation? And if you wouldn't mind just letting us know what your name.
Sure.
And make sure to please speak into the microphone because it's being recorded. Thank you.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Jennifer Holtz. I'm a principal at Studio Tallow, presenting on behalf of our office and the owners. I'm joined by...
My name is Natalia Silyarska. I'm a project manager at Studio Tallow Architecture.
So you may be seeing more of us in the future when some of our firm's projects come before you. This is a beautiful house at the corner of Judson and Kedzie. The owners are new owners, very excited to be moving in as soon as work is complete. And one of the things that really drew them to the house was its historic character. The proposed work is renovation. It impacts multiple levels of the home and 3 areas with exterior changes. So the first area of work is a kitchen and mudroom renovation, and that involves changes to fenestration on the west facade that you can see in this elevation. You can see what's there now on the left. This was originally a service entrance. The staff report, which I know you've all read, sort of draws a great historic reference to that, the movement of the craftsman style really stressed the importance of simplifying the dwelling structure to address the daily lives of the homeowners. And our daily lives have changed. The way we live in our houses have changed. So where originally a service entrance would be without windows or much character, now we really do live in our kitchens in ways that we didn't used to and want them to be connected to the backyards where we tend to come and go most often. So the changes here are addressing that there's a mudroom space beyond the new door and windows that you see. We're borrowing from the fenestration above in terms of our sort of solids and voids and patterns of windows here, and again on the home's sort of local areas of symmetry. I think I'll keep going through the other 2 areas. You can see the second proposed change is also on this elevation where we would change out 2 existing double hung windows in the basement so that we can provide egress windows with a window well. So that's just really a safety measure and allows us to have a bedroom in that basement, which is part of the renovation. Kate, can we move to the east elevation, because then I can point out the final change. This change is, you can see on the far left, proposes infilling a window that's there that was originally part of a back stair. And unfortunately, we don't have for you the existing plans, but there is currently a back stair that was blocked off at the bottom so that previous owners could install a powder room at the first floor level. So it's a stair to nowhere. a poor use of space, but also a fire hazard. So we aim to address that both by making better use of the space, which means filling in the windows so that a second floor bedroom can have a closet at that location. So you can see where it is. This elevation, you can see from the photographs, that portion of the house sits back from the main facade and does not sort of present with the large porch structure at the front, and is visible, but not, architectural elevations tend to just flatten everything and make you think it's all in the same plane, but that's sort of sitting back from the street. So those are the three areas of change that are addressing the changes on the inside. And again, I think, the biggest one is on the west at the new mudroom. And there we're addressing, among other things, but I think it's good to point out, borrowing from the proportions of openings above and the sort of rhythm of solid and void, again, from the windows above. Construction standard number 7, in terms of materials, there are both of the window infill and the work at the mudroom involve replacing brick soldier courses and other decorative brickwork that's part of the house. So we're sensitive to that, and that will be part of the work. The brick that we remove from the mudroom can be used for the window infill. So we know we'll have a great match to do that work. Any other? No? So I think that summarizes it. We'd be happy to take questions or help address any other items. Thank you.
Questions for the applicant from the commission?
This is absolutely a beautiful house and a wonderful location right on the corner. It's amazing, and I really, really appreciate the sensitivity and the detail that you guys are planning to do here. But I think there was a mention about replacing the fence.
That is, I'm going to defer to my colleague who knows more.
Not that we are aware of.
Oh, okay. Well, because, it does hide so much. The fence just totally dominates the whole corner and hides so much of this house. I found cracks in the fence to be able to look at it. So, but if, it would be wonderful if somewhere down the line they were to have a more neighborhood-friendly fence, say, or a fence that allowed more of the house to be visible. So.
Okay.
I just have a question. So the two windows on either side of the door, is that a double hung window?
Both double hungs there, and you can see there are lots of other double hungs, one
Right.
over one at the house. The windows above would be fixed and are set to, so that the heads of those align with the heads of all the other first floor windows.
That was it, okay. Any other questions for the applicant? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we will, was there anyone from the public here to speak? Okay. We will then have our own conversation, the commissioners. Does anyone want to say anything? Comments?
The only note that I had for myself was whether or not you were going to be salvaging that brick to use up front, and you are, and I think that's great. Hopefully that works out as well as you hope it will. But yeah.
Yeah, that was actually my only comment as well, that I'm glad to see a project that's actively salvaging brick and reusing it in the project. That's the best practice we want. Other comments?
I guess I'm just going to That was my other comment too, but I mean, there's nothing better than using the material on site because it's a good match. It already fits with what's there, so I think it's a nice design.
All right, does anyone have a motion? Does anyone want to make a motion? Go ahead.
All right, for case number 23 Pres-0233, 748 Judson Avenue in the Lakeshore Historic District, I move that we issue a certificate of appropriateness to alter the home's west elevation fenestration, enclosing a basement window with brick to match existing, installing new windows and a door in new openings, and replacing 2 existing double-hung basement windows with egress windows at the home's rear volume, and enclosing a second-story double-hung window with brick to match existing at the home's east elevation.
Do we have a second?
Yeah, I second that.
Okay, it's been second. I think we can just do a voice vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And we have 1 abstention. Okay, that passes. Thank you. Okay, moving on to new business, item B, 23 Pres 0228, 1045 Maple Avenue. It's a landmark. Oh, should we get? So I'm going to wait for a moment for our colleague to return. Okay, 23 Pres 0228, 1045 Maple Avenue, landmark. Could staff please read this into the record?
Ken Hazlitt, architect and applicant on behalf of the homeowner, requests a certificate of appropriateness to demolish an existing single-story, 1-car detached garage and construct an alley accessible 2-story coach house with ground floor parking and upper-story accessory dwelling unit. Applicable standards, demolition 1 through 6, and construction 1 through 11, and 13, 14, and 17.
Hi, you're the applicant. If you
Yes.
could just go ahead and let us know your name, and then you can begin.
Okay, I'm Ken Hazlitt. I'm an architect here in Evanston. And the owner is Charlie Sagan. He's right there. And his mom, Betsy, who will be hopefully living in this coach house. This is a landmark property, but not in a landmark district. I included in my package, I hope you got it, but I brought copies in case you didn't. When it was made a landmark in 1978, there was a statement of significance, and it kind of talked about what the Landmark Commission felt at that time was important about this property, why they made it a landmark. The garage, I also included with that a copy of the original building permit for this house. 1909 was the building permit. In the records, I went to the historic society, and in the records it says 1904, but I found the building permit's 1909. There's no mention of the garage in this, and if you visited the site, you see that the garage is actually a vertical batten siding, and the house is a stucco house. Also, 1909, I don't really think they were building garages because there weren't that many cars. Some of them are old stables and such, but I think this garage was built at a later time. It's in very bad shape right now. I included some photos along with the submittals so that you could see what it looked like and such. What we would like permission to do within the current zoning ordinance, not asking for any zoning variations, is to demolish the existing garage, which really is collapsing and falling down, and build a ADU with parking on the first floor and a little storage, and then a place to live on the second floor, basically a 1-bedroom apartment of sorts up there. We wanted to keep the design of this very consistent. I know you're going through those. I did mount things here.
You do need to be in the microphones.
Of course.
Sorry.
I wanted to kind of show you the photos of the existing house. I'm just going to open that board right here. I know there that might be of some help to you. The existing house right here, which, and the character of that house, it's a stucco, basically a farmhouse, which has horizontal bead band boards below the windows on the first and the second floor. The massing is such that certain elements are pulled out and the windows are grouped together in 2s or 3s. So we tried to follow that vocabulary and that language in the coach house as well, because you can see the coach house not only from the house, but as you drive down Greenleaf as well. The garage access is off the alley, so that kind of minimizes the effect of the garage door and such. So we follow the vocabulary of the main house with the horizontal band boards, the massing of the house with the projection in the front here. For us, it's a stair projection in the back, the low sloping roofs, the eaves, to try to keep this as a kind of a smaller version of the main house. Very consistent with that. That was our intent, so that it wouldn't stand out. Maybe more consistent than the garage that is there now, who knows? Thank you. That goes through them, yeah, a little bit. That's the main house, right, exactly. And if you go further on, you'll see because these drawings are maybe a little small, maybe you can see on the drawings, you can see the location on the site, and then next slide you can see the elevations of it. There we are. Right, exactly. So the whole point was to try to be inspired by the main house, but not replicate it perfectly. That's not the whole thing. This is smaller, and it's a different organization than the main house as well. I think that when we were working on this, what we tried to do is follow the description in the statement of significance. What they felt was important, we tried to replicate that in the new coach house. Any questions?
You're done.
I just have a quick question.
Sure.
The coach house with the new garage, is it going to be the same orientation in terms of where the garage door is? Just trying to, because I know right now, isn't it facing? It's a corner, so it's facing.
It faces Greenleaf.
Is
Yeah.
that the same? I'm just trying to get
No, the garage door faces the alley.
Okay, so
because there's no curb cut right now.
Got
and
it.
So curb cut is not allowed. So really, we had to face it towards the alley.
Okay,
Yeah.
so the new coach house, it'll
Yeah.
be in. Okay,
Here's the
yeah.
Here's the alley facade of the coach house, okay? And here's the view from Greenleaf. That's the Greenleaf side right there. It follows the same orientation as the main house in that the roof slopes in the same direction. It's not perpendicular.
Thanks.
I had a question. Speaking of the roof, is the roof line, where does the roof line of the coach house end up relative to the main house?
It's lower, of course. No, maybe not, of course. It is lower. We've stayed under the maximum for this, which is 28 feet. It's 27 feet, 11 inches. So it's approaching the maximum and such. The main house is about 32 and a half feet. So it's lower than that is what it is. Yeah. Another important thing is that on the main house, you maybe can see it on the photo, there are these ornamental brackets that are underneath the roof and support the roof. And we're going to replicate those on the coach house as well. So that once again, we're trying to make a relationship between these two, not a replication, just a relationship between the same vocabulary organized differently.
And question for clarification.
Yeah.
Is the roof, what type of roof is proposed for the garage, and what type of roof is on the main house?
The main house has an asphalt shingle roof, and we would follow suit. And then the color scheme, too, I think is important to follow suit. Not just the roof, but the trim and the color of the stucco and such, so that those things are compatible with one another.
Kate, I think in the staff report it says that the garage was original. Do you know where we got that information from?
I think I just couldn't find the same documentation maybe that he found. So I would defer to the applicant that, certainly the timing would lend itself to that not being a garage, but it could have potentially been a shed, I suppose,
Yeah,
or something
there's no
similar.
mention, the building permit describes what it is a building permit for. No mention of garage. I don't know when the garage was built, but I don't think it was built with the house. I can say that.
So you never considered doing batten board wood exterior?
No, to be honest with you, because I think that was something dissonant that was added at a later time for the garage because it was inexpensive, maybe. Who knows why. So, no, I think that replicating the materials of the original house is the appropriate thing to do for the coach house.
I have a question about the west elevation.
Of course.
So I see 3 windows kind of marching up. I'm assuming there's a staircase behind that.
It is. That's
And-
what that is, yeah.
Yeah, and so can you just talk about your thoughts about that? Is there anything like that on the main house?
There
Where
isn't.
is that coming from?
There isn't, and this is something where I think, I guess I'm asking you for a little license on it. We could have done the windows just as a band, and then the stair would have gone up behind the windows. You'd have maybe seen the stair through it and such. To me, there's something about the rhythm of that. It says this is a staircase going up there. I don't think it's inconsistent with the main house, and I thought it was a nice gesture, to be honest with you, but it could certainly be done as a horizontal band as well.
I mean, we're not looking for mini-me's
I know,
on on the garages, so that's not. I just was wondering. We don't typically see full windows stacked like that, so I was wondering where that was coming from. It looks like a lot of window.
It's really the staircase. It's almost like a light tower that brings light into, the living space and such, to be honest with you. So, yeah, there is a lot of windows in there, but it's also, if you looked at the front facade of the main house, there is a group of 3 windows on both floors. There we are. See, there's a group of 3 windows. And the staircase structure is kind of like replicating that on the main structure that's pulled out, that kind of tower or whatever that's pulled out on the coach house, that's pulled out, but it's expressed where the windows are stepped up, because I think that's a natural expression of what's going on behind there with the staircase. But the massing is meant to kind of replicate the massing of the existing house.
Then the other question I had was just to confirm that what you have under the notes in the center of the sheet, here with the drawings, the elevations, is consistent with what you're going. It's still valid that the trim, fascias, soffits, brackets, and sills are going to be wood to match existing, and because it's not called out on the actual drawings so much.
I put the note on there so you would know that. It's important to us to follow the same vocabulary as the existing house, maybe at a slightly reduced scale, but that's all.
And the windows are wood clad?
They are
Still.
wood-clad windows, that's correct.
And so may I add a question
Yeah.
about the muntins for those
Yes,
windows? Are
sure.
they simulated divided light? Or
That's
are
what we
they-
normally
okay.
get is simulated divided light, and we followed the same pattern as in the main house. The main house has that pattern in the upper sash and nothing in the lower sash. It's another way of just making a relationship.
So then I have another question. Have you talked about any kind of salvage or deconstruction or anything, some alternative to demolition for the garage?
Well, what we can do is we can salvage the materials. I don't think the wood and such. I don't think we can reuse any portion of the garage. It's just in too bad a shape. But I do have a salvage guy that I work with in demolition, and we could salvage the wood, but we couldn't reuse it in the project itself.
So what would be the plan for the salvaged wood in that case? if you
Well,
were to
they
do that?
recycle it, is what they do for projects where it can be used. The concrete slab and such in the garage is just all cracked up and a mess, and I don't see how that could be salvaged at all.
The windows?
Yeah, they're really single pane, even at this stage, maybe 90 or 100-year-old windows, and I just sometimes we try to find somebody to use them, but very few people want those, to be honest with you.
Commissioner Smith, did you want to hop in?
Yes, I wanted to pursue something here as a possibility. I did look at the garage, and as a matter of fact, I went back today to take another look at it, and I found it to be pretty solid, actually. I mean, structurally, while there may be. So I wanted to find out some. So, but the idea is to demolish it, haul away. And also, there are two mature trees, oak trees, behind it. Is the intention to remove those trees?
The intention is to remove, the one is actually growing into the garage, and that would have to come down and such. The other one possibly could stay, but the idea right now is certainly to remove that one that's growing into the garage.
I don't think there's an obligation at this point to deal with the trees, but
Yeah.
but a consideration would be good.
Sure.
So, but the building itself, is it insulated, the garage? No, and does it have electricity?
It has electricity, yeah, sure. It has electricity.
And but no plumbing, probably.
No.
So, but there's a cost associated with demolition,
Yes.
right? Right. So, we have this idea about mitigation when, is that the term, mitigation? When historic structures are removed. And so there's this idea of it hasn't particularly negative impact, not really, but, but we'd like to find ways to make it better, shall we
Yeah,
say.
sure.
So I was wondering if, depending on, certainly on the condition of the building, if possibly the new owners would be interested in donating the building. And of course, I think there may be some kind of a tax deduction or some way to do that. But maybe the city could possibly relocate the building to another site because of its location and its size.
Yeah.
It would be possible, I think, and maybe even donate what it would cost to demolish it to the effort to relocate it. There is a park that I think would be a great candidate, Twiggs Park. And my query would be about whether or not it would be possible to to locate the building, to donate the building, help with the
I'd be glad to look into that.
cost of the relocation, offsets the cost of demolition.
Demolition it, yeah.
And I think there was some mention in the documents about some relationship with an African American person in Chicago. I would be, I mean, in my imagination, I see a building like that that's with its historical significance located in Twiggs Park with a little plaque that indicates its history and a reference to the African American involvement. But I think it would be. I mean, we have talked about salvage. I guess relocating a whole building is kind of the ultimate in salvage. And this is only an investigation. So.
Yeah, I'd be glad to look into it and see if it could be salvaged, and if the Parks Department would would be interested in receiving it. If we could move it over there somehow, we'd have need a new foundation, but maybe we
course,
could move
of
that
course.
and such, yeah. Uh-huh.
Does preservation have any role in something like that, or other than?
I'd be willing
suggesting
to look into it, whether you have a role or not, just as a.
I think we just have to have
goal.
conversations with other departments to figure out if that's something they're willing to
Yeah,
accept on Parkland.
I would certainly be able, I'd help in any way I could, so
Sure.
that's it.
I just wanted to ask, where's Twigs Park, and what do you see used for the building? Like, what was your vision?
Well, Twigs Park is is where they just they just built the skate park. But it runs adjacent to the Fifth Ward.
I see.
And presently, there are no buildings of any type in the park. I spend a lot of my time down at Lighthouse Park, where we have a couple buildings, the fog houses, which get a lot of use. And those buildings are roughly the same size, maybe even those are a little smaller than this building. But this building, I think I found to be really charming, really attractive. And it's just, of course, it would depend on how the condition of it. But I've actually done a similar thing before. So the obstacles to moving buildings are usually the obstacles of where it is to where you'd like it to be.
Right.
This building just has a kind of an ideal location to, jack it up, put something under it and drive off with it. If it was in the middle of an alley or something, no. If it was someplace where there was any kind of physical barriers, but there's a straight shot to Twigs Park.
I'd be glad to look into it.
And the other issue with moving stuff, of course, is the lights and things overhead.
Yeah.
This has us. It's not at all. It just might be
Might work.
work. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
sure. I'll be glad to look into it.
thank you.
Much better to reuse it than to throw it away.
And I think the
recycle
connection
it.
with the neighborhood and the whole thing, it just sounds like a good thing to do.
Yeah, I got it. Being a good neighbor.
Other questions for the applicant?
So I can't remember, did you let us know what the purpose of building this? You said that the owner, his mother was going to be moving into the house?
Owner, Charlie, right there. His parents currently live in Evanston here on Forest, and, they're, no offense, Betsy, they're getting older, and they'd like to stay in Evanston, and they'd like to have a good, safe place monitored by their son, and this seemed like the right solution. So it's enabling them to stay in Evanston and to stay near their family, and that seems like the right use for an AUD.
Other questions for the applicant?
Yeah, just another question just about the scale of the existing and the proposed.
Yes.
What is the square foot area of the footprint of the existing and then the new proposed?
The existing.
Roughly.
Yeah, that's okay. The existing, I can get that off of I've got it right here.
Of the footprint, you mean, right? Or
Yeah,
the
just the
entire,
footprint.
just the footprint?
The existing is something around 350 square feet. That's off of the site plan here.
Oh, okay.
The new has a larger footprint there. It's, it's about 1,250, so it's a much bigger footprint.
Is that with the 2 floors?
No, it's the footprint
That
of
is
the
the
building.
footprint,
Right,
okay.
exactly, yeah.
Okay. Got it.
It takes up more of the
So it's bigger,
backyard,
yeah.
but it's under the limits for ADUs and the zoning.
Good. Okay.
Other questions for the applicant? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there anyone here from the public who wishes to speak on this matter? Did we get anything in writing? Okay. All right. Commissioners want to comment with each other? Discussion? Go ahead.
I think it's exactly what the ADU ordinance was meant to do. So I think even though it's bigger, it's supposed to be about this size. And And from visiting the site, it seems like it's going to fit in. I think actually its location right on Greenleaf can kind of handle that mass. So even though it is allowed, it's also kind of nice to kind of hold that corner. I think it's a very sensitive use of materials and proportions, and the plan was included. So just a shout out to Ken. It's a great layout. And I think it's very nice.
Other comments?
I just have a question. I'm trying to, because originally I was looking at the standards for demolition, but then since, Charles, you brought this up, the idea of relocation, I'm just wondering what standard that would, do we have a standard for relocating historic structures within the city? Or I'm just wondering.
There are a separate set of standards for relocation
Because
that I don't have off the top of my head.
I mean, I'm sure it meets those standards, but I mean, it's just, it's an interesting idea of moving the whole structure and because of the history tied to the structure.
I was under the impression that standards for relocation have to do primarily with what happens when it gets to its final destination and how it's sited and stuff, but Kate's looking it up right now. I think that that's a great idea, and my question for you is whether you want to include it in the certificate of appropriateness language, or if it's just something to be handled informally. How do you feel about that? Yeah.
Well, I think it should be referenced.
In the
Okay. But there are a lot of unknowns.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that it should be indicated that it's something that should be pursued and seriously pursued, but with the understanding that for reasons it may not be possible.
Okay, so with sort of a contingent or dependent kind of language.
Well, we have to ask the city if they're willing.
Right.
But I think if the owner would be willing to donate money to it, because it's going to cost money to get rid of it anyway.
Right.
And,
And I'll take the responsibility of kind of being the motivator to look into with Kate and Carlos's help and such, and sending me to the right departments and stuff. And I know the owners are very cooperative, so we'll make every effort to do that.
Yeah.
I would ask you not to make it a contingent upon it, but
No.
we have to do it because there's too many unknowns.
No. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. No, I just wanted to make sure that we understood what we were talking about. It's a conversation more than anything else. The question that I have for staff is whether the family that donates it could have their name put on it, like donated by such and such family, if that could be included. Is that something that they could have if they wanted it?
I would like to say yes. I think these are, we just have to have more in-depth conversations with
Okay.
the Parks Department.
Okay.
Who would control that.
So that's something that you all can talk about too, if you decide to donate it.
And we do have to answer Carl's question, the standards for relocation, there are four. One it speaks to the existing site and whether the existing integrity of setting of that site would be negatively impacted by relocation. It talks about a requirement to have definite plans for the area after the relocation. It talks about whether the relocation of the structure can be accomplished without damage to it, and whether the proposed location is compatible to accept that building.
It sounds to me like this plan meets that, right?
Right, I
Yeah.
mean, there's already a planned use for the site after, and so basically, yes, I would agree that pending discussion with the city, it meets.
Do you feel that it meets the standards for relocation as you understand them?
I do.
Mm-hmm.
I do. I think it's really a good candidate, and maybe an example
Yep.
for how such things could be treated in the future.
Comment?
Yeah, I was picking up on that comment. I'm wondering if this should be more of a conversation as we're seeing more and more ADUs being proposed with the recent ordinance. I love the idea, and I think finding a way to prolong the life of these materials and the building as a whole, even in some cases, is really worthwhile pursuing. And so I'm just wondering if like this might become more and more frequent part of our conversation up here.
It is something that we could even invite somebody from the Parks District to talk to us about that, or, you know, we could do part of the speaker series on that if that's something that ends up being interesting. In any case, it sounds to me that we are ready for a motion for this item. Does anyone else have anything that you want to say before we move to the motion? Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I just wanted to also, on the record, I think ADUs are great. This one is good. I like that there's an elevator, which there's like an aging in place opportunity, which I think is nice, opens it up to more, you know, people who could possibly use it, even in the years, you know, into the future, handicapped, et cetera. And then I also just wanted to say, the idea of relocating I had never even considered it. I'd never thought about it. I just saw like an old garage, so I appreciate you bringing that to the commission and making me think a little bit broader on things.
So does anyone have a motion for a certificate of appropriateness? Does he want to try?
I guess-
You want to try it?
I make a motion that application 21 Pres 0228, 1040 Maple Avenue, which is a
And
landmark.
1045.
I'm sorry,
Sorry,
1040
for the
Maple
record.
Avenue, which is a landmark.
You can start on the second line there.
Certificate of appropriateness, I'm sorry, for anyone who's paying attention to this is my first time, probably my last time after this, but a certificate of appropriateness to demolish an existing single-story, one-car detached garage and construct an alley-accessible two-story coach house with ground floor parking and upper-story accessory dwelling unit. Is that it?
Well, yeah, unless you wanted to add anything about having a conversation regarding moving the building instead of demolishing it.
And that this motion includes reference to the possibility of relocating the old garage to a new location, potentially Twiggs Park, with the cooperation of the City of Evanston departments and appropriate condition and financing.
I'll
All right.
second.
And it's been second. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstentions? Seeing none, motion passes. Thank you. Good luck with that. Next order of new business,
Yeah, well,
next item in new business is the adoption of the 2024 meeting schedule. Could staff
Afraid I was gonna think it's a little weird there.
speak to that, please?
The 2024 meeting schedule, the vast majority of meeting dates fall on the second Tuesday of each month. The only places where we deviate are January, where we're proposing the meeting date be held on the third Tuesday. That's because the application deadline falls around the holiday season, which would be difficult for applicants. And I believe that's a month where there are 4 Tuesdays as well. And the other deviation is July, also proposed for the third Tuesday. That's because the commission would be reviewing the packet materials over the 4th of July holiday otherwise. And then as we've done at least over the past 4 years, and it was pretty common in years prior to that as well, we're proposing to cancel the August meeting due to historic low applications and also difficulty with quorum in the past.
Is there any discussion among commissioners about the meeting schedule? We have to vote on it? Sure. Okay. All right. I would like to move to adopt the meeting schedule as it is in the December agenda. Do we have a second for that motion? Okay, it's been seconded. All in favor? Aye. Aye. All opposed? Any abstain? All right, motion carries. That will be our 2024 meeting schedule. Next item of business is the approval of the meeting minutes of November 14th, 2024. Were there any comments on those minutes?
Yeah, I received one comment from Commissioner Ziem to amend the minutes to include her no vote, the standards, not just alteration 1, but also standard for construction number 10.
Sounds good. Thank you. Any other comments on the minutes? All right, then we will move on to discussion. Item number 5, discussion, no vote will be taken. Memorandum of agreement regarding demolition of Ryan Field. We should probably read this into the record. Thank you.
Members of the Preservation Commission will discuss the proposed memorandum of agreement to be made among Northwestern University, the Illinois Environmental Protection Agency, and the Illinois State Historic Preservation Officer regarding demolition of Ryan Field. The purpose of discussion is not to mandate a specific outcome. The Commission's task is to consider whether the proposed mitigations constitute an adequately appropriate response to the adverse impact that the State Historic Preservation Officer has already identified. The Commission's comments, as well as public comment received during this meeting, will be sent to the Illinois State Historic Preservation Officer to inform fulfillment of the Illinois State Agency Historic Resources Preservation Act, as known commonly as Section 707, 20 ILCS 3420.
Okay, we will begin the discussion, and I have a few items that I would like to say to begin. Okay, so first of all, I want to say for the record that I'm a qualified architectural historian under the United States Secretary of the Interior's Professional Qualification Standards 36 CFR Appendix A to Part 61C. So that is the standard that is mentioned in the memorandum of agreement for the contractor that the owner has to hire to implement this memorandum of agreement. It is not the qualification that we need to be on the commission, but it is a qualification that I actually have myself, and I have been qualified under the Secretary of Interior standards for 22 years. I have implemented these kinds of things myself and also helped clients understand what to do. So I have a few comments, but please, I'm going to get a little bit into tiny bit into the detail, but it's not meant to, that's just how I am. Beginning on page 2 of the memorandum of agreement, page 70 in the packet. Number 1, under stipulations, I would like to suggest that we revise the first section title to read 1 mitigations-recordation. Next, under 1B, I would like to suggest that we revise to refer to IDNR's document entitled Historic Illinois Building Survey and Historic Illinois Engineering Record Standards and Guidelines, and include the list of level 2 recordation requirements as found on page 3 of that document, and actually list them out in the MOA as opposed to just referring to the amendment. And as a sort of summary, the level 2 documentation is drawings on Mylar, exterior and interior view photos, historic photos, contextual histories, and architectural/site description. I did find an example of a memorandum of agreement that included this as opposed to just referring to the amendment. So for the record, it is an MOA regarding demolition of 7260 Madison Street in River Forest, Illinois. Its SHPO log number, in case anyone is interested in looking it up, 020622722. Next, under 1.I.2, I would like to suggest that we revise to indicate that a second archival copy of the recordation be offered to the Evanston Public Library for use in their public reference section. Currently, the MOA that we looked at only has that archival copy going to the state library. But it is standard preservation best practice in other states to put copies in the local public library as well for the use of the local public. People that do not have internet access or for some reason cannot look at these materials online, can't get to the state library, to have it at the local library. Now, obviously, there could be instances in which the local library can't accession it for some reason, can't have it in their reference section. So in any case, I would like to suggest that it be offered to them rather than require it, so that the public library isn't put under some kind of requirement to accept it if they can't for some reason. But I would like to suggest that memorandums of agreement going forward include the Evanston Public Library if possible. For me, this set of suggestions is part of my, corresponds to my preservation goal of education. In the Preserve 2040 plan, it's initiative, I believe, 4.2 for the record. Next, I would like to suggest that we add another section to mitigate, entitled "To Mitigations-Salvage." The example that I would offer is actually the same MOA that I just referred to, the River Forest one, a few minutes ago. It has a section on salvage in it. And in this particular case for Ryan Field, I would like to suggest that we invite architectural salvage professionals and organizations such as Rebuilding Exchange to tour Ryan Field, the Ryan Field site before demolition, to identify items that could be salvaged or deconstructed. For me, my personal preservation goal, like the reason why I'm suggesting this, has to do with climate resilience, and it corresponds to Preserve 2040 Initiative 3.7. Next, I would like to suggest that we add another mitigation entitled 3 Mitigations-Architectural and Cultural Heritage Interpretive Signage / Markers. As an example, I would like to suggest Chicago Avenue MOA. It's I.dot number 23602, SHPO log number 0030512223. In this particular case, I would like to suggest that we ask that the owner install interpretive signage and/or markers to convey the historic significance of the demolished Ryan Field building and its site. I would like to suggest that we specify in the MOA that the owner's contractor, someone like me, should ask for input and guidance from tribal historic preservation offices of tribal nations whose land Northwestern and Evanston traditionally sit on, about including information on the interpretive signage / markers regarding Ryan Field's sites, the Ryan Field site's native-focused history and cultural significance. I would like to suggest that the preparation of the interpretive text and images should include review by us, the Preservation Commission, and tribal historic preservation offices of tribal nations whose land Northwestern and Evanston traditionally sit on. And this is assuming that tribal leaders think that including information about Native-focused history and cultural significance is a good idea. I understand there are some instances in which that might not be of interest to tribal leaders to point out cultural significance in different ways, so I don't want to obligate them. It's sort of the same way that I was saying about not wanting to obligate Evanston Public Library. I want to give them the option. So I would like to suggest that somehow the language is such that the tribal leaders are given the opportunity to decide for themselves if their cultural heritage of what they associate with this site is included on the interpretive signage. And if so, then they obviously would then have the opportunity to review the text and images that are going to be used. I would also like to suggest that we ask that this interpretive signage / markers be specifically placed along a publicly accessible exterior sidewalk near the new stadium. In other words, not inside the stadium, but publicly accessible, so that you don't need to buy a ticket to go see this stuff. For me, the sort of reason why I'm suggesting this, I guess, from a personal perspective is my goals of education and diversity, equity, and inclusion. I do believe that this corresponds to Preserve 2040 survey and documentation goal kind of generally, and also initiatives 1.7 and 4.2. I'm almost done. I promise. And then finally, I would like to suggest an additional mitigation, which would be called 4 Mitigations-Permit Fee Waiver Program Fund. I would like to suggest that we ask the owner to provide seed funding for a new permit fee waiver program for city landmark owners who are undertaking renovations, so not demolitions. If you're a landmark owner and you want to demolish your project, you got to pay the fee. But my suggestion is that perhaps we have some kind of new permit fee waiver program for landmark owners who want to undertake renovations, that the owners of this building that are getting permission to demolish would help to sort of support. Now, I think that the question is how much money this would be. I have asked Kate. Kate's been great, trying to track down some data about how much actually we need. What the average, I asked what the average annual amount of permit fee revenue is collected from landmark owners from the city of Evanston, but that's been hard to find over the very short number of days that we had between when we discovered that this was going to be on the agenda and today. So I'm not entirely sure. I'm open to suggestions for how much this fund should be. I was trying to come up with a logical way of figuring out what the seed funding should be for this. I'm almost done. And in any case, the idea, though, is to address the idea of affordability, which is a big issue in Evanston, and preservation can have a role in that. And it corresponds to Preserve 2040 Initiative 2.3. Actually, 2.3 in Preserve 2040 is exactly this, a new permit fee waiver program. My last comment is that if we are not ready to start a new program, then there is Preserve 2040 Initiative 2.7, which is actually reinstating an incentive program for commercial, historic, or legacy buildings and businesses. Some sort of incentive program for them, and we do have a new legacy business program. And I do think that it could be nice to think about using this money to support businesses in Evanston, either in addition to a new permit fee waiver program or just instead of that, depending on how we want to do it. So those are my thoughts, and I especially would be very interested to hear what you guys think the amount of money could be, since we were not able to track down something in the last couple days. Thank you.
May I make
Yes,
may
go
I
ahead.
make a suggestion but also reach out to the Evanston History Center, because they have their archive includes a very extensive archive of building records for buildings in Evanston. So I think that would be also a great repository if the public library wasn't able to accession the drawings that possibly the History Center could.
Right, so that would be, you're talking about under one, it says it's 2 I's in a row, but one is a 1 and one is an I. So that's why I keep pausing. It's section 1.I.2, the part where there would be a second archival copy that I was suggesting it go to Evanston Public Library. So you're suggesting that if Evanston Public Library can't take it, the History Center would, or a third archival copy would be offered to the History Center?
I don't care if it's 2 or 1, but I think that you should reach out to the History Center just to see if they're, willing to take a copy.
Yeah, I mean, it would be
because they
the
have
owner.
that archive already.
Yep.
So
Yeah, well, we would suggest that be put in the MOA, and then the owner's contractor would reach out to them. So I think that's great. Absolutely.
I do think, though, that the library is probably more accessible, and the ability to display it and would be. I also have another comment, if I could. Northwestern has demonstrated really fantastic outreach abilities. I know I've received a lot of stuff in my mailbox in Northwestern regarding Ryan Field. The concept of mitigation and all the things you just talked about, I don't think that it's generally known in the public. And I think that it would be appropriate that either in Northwestern do it themselves or they fund an effort to educate the citizens of Evanston more on the concepts you just talked about and the impact and why it's important to them, because I think it's a whole new area. Well, it was for me. So I think that much of what you just said needs to be communicated effectively.
I think it needs to be stated that this MOU, I don't think has been shared with the Tribal Historic Preservation offices because it's being signed between Northwestern and the state. And the chair and I did attend a meeting where numerous Tribal Historic Preservation officers were in attendance. They came to great lengths to come here across multiple states. And here's a quote from one of them. It's Section 707 review, which is this is a state review, which is supposed to mirror the National Historic Preservation Act at the state level. She said it has major failings within that, and she didn't want to say it was necessarily due to the Illinois State Historic Preservation Office, their fault, but she said it's probably because an overall outcome of this is because Illinois is a state that has numerous tribes that have been forcibly removed from the state, and there's kind of this general consensus that they don't exist because they're not here to advocate for themselves because they're in other states. And I think that this memorandum of agreement, yes, while it's between the property owner and the state, I think we also have to acknowledge it's not just about the stadium. The Tribal Historic Preservation Office from the Pokagon Band wrote a letter to the Land Use Commission stating that they had deep concerns about their potential sensitive archaeological sites and I have a problem that this process is kind of moving at breakneck speed, because Northwestern wants to start construction, and we're not including the tribes in this process, because I think that part of this mitigation would be, like the gentleman that wrote the public comment said, that we do proactive work and we actually survey the site and make sure that we know what's there so that we don't end up with a problem where we have a half-built stadium that the work has to stop and then we have to, do this work.
So can you kind of tell us what your proposed mitigation is?
Well, my proposed mitigation would be to reach out to the Native Americans, the Tribal Historic Preservation offices, and make sure that they are okay with this agreement, because it does deal with some of their cultural resources, and I can't speak on their behalf. So I think that they need to be reached out to. And I understand that we have a deadline by the end of the month because the state and Northwestern want to sign this, but I think we need to take our time and do this right. So.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry, I'm still not clear. So what would we actually put in the memorandum of agreement? What would you like to suggest for the actual memorandum?
Personally, I cannot say that. I think that we need to reach out to the Tribal Historic Preservation offices to see what they would like to be included into this agreement so that their cultural resources are properly cared for throughout the process of the construction of the stadium.
Okay. Yeah, it's a general comment. I thought that he was suggesting an actual mitigation. So I should note that I did attempt to begin reaching out to them. I started an email and stuff, but I did not have enough time to write it properly because of the amount of time that we had between when we found out that this was going to be on the agenda and today. So So I would agree that, that the timing has been part of the problem here for us, for me at least. I just didn't really have enough time to put together the email properly. Go ahead.
When you said that it was put on the agenda, I assume you guys made the agenda, so where did it came from the state?
It wasn't going to be on the agenda, and then it got on the agenda on Friday.
From whom? Who said this should be on your agenda?
The city.
The city. Okay. So it didn't come from the state, it came from the city.
So a little bit of background. The city is not a signatory to this, or we're what's called a consulting party.
Yeah.
And it's my understanding that there are additional consulting parties. I believe Landmarks Illinois is also a consulting party to this. The way that consulting parties engage with the community or engage in this process or don't engage with this process, that's largely up to the consulting party to choose. So you don't have to comment on it at all. Now, the city, and we talked about this in our last meeting, we're what's called a certified local government. We have a requirement as being part of that to encourage public participation in preservation activities, and I think that this rises to that occasion. And that is really a central tenet to this whole process, both the Section 106 and the Section 107. It really parallels or mirrors that process. Public engagement is really significant to determine how significant is this resource? What does it mean to lose the stadium to this community? And whatever that level of severity is, that's what the mitigation should be proportionate to. So what I'm hearing, from Chair Dreller or Commissioner Klein is that the adverse impact is significant in this case to lose the stadium for many reasons, whether that be its architectural significance, the site's cultural significance. It also just has generally deep associations with the city. Those neighborhoods have evolved with the stadium since the 1920s. It's really kind of the definition of a landmark. If you think about the general term of a landmark, that's probably it. When you think about Central Street, you think about the stadium there. So I think all of these things combined, it made the decision that this deserves some kind of public-facing process and was put on the agenda.
Do we have any ability or to extend the time period?
I don't believe so. As a consulting party, our job is really just to provide input. Whether they choose to accept that input or not, that's between the state of Illinois and Northwestern University. But I think that they encourage public involvement. They encourage the involvement of the local experts. That's what this commission is, to generate ideas so that they can better understand really what it means both to lose that resource and what types of mitigation might benefit the local community, because they have really no way of understanding that otherwise. They're based in Springfield. They make trips all over the state, but they don't know our community like our community.
It sounds like, from what I'm hearing, so like the tribal preservation offices, like Commissioner Klein mentioned, like some of these other groups just won't have an opportunity to weigh in or be consulted. Is that right? Because the quick timeline.
So I don't want to speak for the state of Illinois, but I know that they encourage Northwestern to reach out to those groups. I can't speak for Northwestern whether they've done that or not. I don't know if Director Flax has an answer to that.
Thank you, Sarah Flax, Community Development Director. This partially addresses that, I think, and this is an email from Anna Margaret Barris, and she's referring to information from C.J. Wallace, who is the Regulatory Review and Compliance Manager. And this is what Anna Margaret wrote. Additionally, I discussed your email and the proposed outline with C.J. Wallace, CC'd and contact info included, the head of our Regulatory Review and Compliance section. CJ's comments are, the measures for consultation go beyond the 707 process. Northwestern University has agreed to these additional measures, which normally take place in the federal Section 106 review process and are not required under the state law. We appreciate this additional work to keep the community aware and involved. So what we've really been asked to do is provide more than the state, help provide more input than the state normally requires for the 707. They've kind of bumped it up. What they're saying is closer to a federal 106.
I have a question for you since you're there. I understand that part of this process, in addition to the Preservation Commission, is going to be listening sessions. So is one of those listening sessions with these tribal leaders?
We are only the ones doing Evanston. We have not been asked to reach out to the tribes.
Yeah, but they consider Evanston to be their homeland, so would it be possible to have the tribes be part of that?
Well, we can certainly, if we have the contact information, I'd be happy to get it sent to the tribes, absolutely. The listening session is on the 19th, which is next week, and it is virtual because we wanted to make it as broadly available to anyone who was interested in providing input. So we'll be happy to try to reach out to the tribes.
Yeah, we have all the contact information.
Great, we'll do that.
Yeah, and I think that would help because I only had one full business day to try to do that, and I couldn't get it done and give the tribal leaders enough time to actually take a look at that. So that would be great.
Could I ask a question of Sarah also?
Sure.
As I mentioned, I think that there may need to be more. What I've heard and read has been very different than what I've heard tonight. And are we going to try and get more information regarding mitigation ideas to the general public?
Any mitigation ideas that are brought forth, like what we've been doing tonight, we will absolutely, that's part of what we want to submit. That's exactly the time frame. I mean, we're in addition to the listening sessions, anyone can go online and give us written comment, and they can, they can speak at the listening session or they can give us written comment.
So it's available on the city's website?
It's on the city's website. If you go to the calendar, it's on the 19th of the month, and if you click on it, you will get to all that information of how you can provide public comment. We can talk to Jessie Mayo about getting this information out more broadly. She's already working on that through the newsletters and social media, other ways we can reach people.
Good. Thank you.
I know we can't speak for the tribes, but we did get letters, the one that you read, and I think the suggestion, at least from that particular person who is a tribal member, was to do a survey. So, I mean, that might be something we consider. I think, can you put that in the mitigation? I mean, at least that's one sort of anecdotal point. It sounds like, I'm not sure how much outreach will be there to the tribal people, but we do have some comment on record, so we do have some sense of maybe what might be a mitigation that we could include to help, to improve this, mitigation effort, I guess.
I wanted to apologize. I am actually covering for 2 meetings tonight, and I need to run to the Housing and Community Development Committee meeting to answer some questions. I'll be back. I just wanted you to know why I'm walking out of the room. I will be back.
So I think to answer, what is it, page 71 under, what is this? 3 post-review encounters, where it talks about the relatively new law that was Governor Pritzker signed into law, the Human Remains Protection Act, that was, I think, HB 3413. And I think that the general idea behind that law is that Illinois has this large collection of remains that are in archives, state universities, and local municipalities. But then also part of that law is to kind of prevent any destruction of sites moving forward, and to mitigate any adverse effects. And so I guess, like you were saying, in that section, instead of waiting until they find a bone in the ground, that possibly adding a survey in that section might be a good idea. So I don't know how we'd recommend that, but that might be a good idea.
Other thoughts?
Generally speaking, I wanted to thank the chair for her comprehensive review of this. And I think it goes to a broader understanding of preservation that a lot of people, through the 2040 plan and others, were trying to convey, which is, DEI issues are not limited to one space. They're not limited just to what jobs might be available for different kinds of folks, which is a mitigation that Northwestern has brought up. But there are lots of resources that need to be considered through an equity lens, and I just really appreciate that perspective and an expansion of how we view DEI beyond ways that they've been communicated in the past.
I just have a couple more things. People were mentioning sending the documents to the Evanston Library. I mean, you might want to mention Northwestern Library. I know they're doing construction. I don't know if that even gets passed over or not, but it seems obvious. But that might be, they might want to keep part of that in-house as well. Also, I just wanted to say I like the idea of a permit waiver. I don't know how to quantify that without some more data, but I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, I wanted to let other people talk for a while since I know I talked kind of a lot at the beginning. But the permit fee waiver program is something that we have talked about a couple of times, I feel like. And it was an obvious thing to include in Preserve 2040, but it would have to be sort of created in order to receive these funds. So I think it would be a great idea to have Northwestern help landmark owners with renovations. But if anyone has some thoughts about how to quantify that, that would be helpful now. I don't know, do we need a dollar number right at this moment?
I don't think so. I mean, these are all ideas that they can consider.
Okay. My idea was to try to get data from the last 10 years for how much money the City of Evanston, how much revenue the City of Evanston has gotten from landmark owners for permits, and then take the average of that. So I didn't want to go back only a couple of years because that would be caught up in the pandemic, and that's not. But so if we were to go back 10 years, figure out what the average annual amount was, and then multiply that, I thought, by the number of years that the Ryan Field project was going to be ongoing, that somehow there would be some logic to the number that Evanston was, that the owner, I should say, was expected to give to this fund. But I don't know if we can't, I don't want to stipulate that, because then if we can't find that data, then the mitigation's kind of.
I think some data that we could find is, who is this for? This is for folks who might not otherwise be able to engage in rehabilitating these properties. So taking a look at numbers that we have in terms of income, in terms of relative to the population of Evanston, like percentage of homeowners who live below X amount income. These are numbers that conceivably exist that we could get, in lots of different places probably, and then, find out how many, what the number truly is in terms of the annual revenue for the city. I think that we could probably come up with a pretty, just using those, that A and B, maybe a couple of others, come up with a number.
Yeah, we were struggling, and because again, we only had a couple of days to come up with this. So we've been struggling with the data for the revenue part. So anyway, I mean, we don't have to stick to that. We can come up with a different number. I mean, it doesn't have to be based, just because I was suggesting a permit fee program, waiver program, doesn't mean that the dollar number has to be based in permit fees. We can come up with like a percentage of the cost of the project.
Yeah, I think that because we're just giving our recommendations,
right.
just purely making the recommendation that the concept of them giving back and making preservation and assisting landmark owners within this program, funding this program, would be a nice addition to this and a nice mitigating circumstance. I don't think we have to, at this point, give them a number. We just have to say that we think it would be very good if they would fund something like that, and, to be, the amount of funding to be discussed as they flush it out, I would think.
Do you feel comfortable leaving it to
Yeah,
Northwestern?
I would agree with that, particularly because,
Okay.
the
I mean,
state.
we don't have to leave the number exactly to them,
Sure.
but we can say, we want to discuss, we want you to do this, and we can discuss
Yeah,
what that
sure.
will be.
I mean, the state may not agree that any additional mitigation is necessary.
Right.
They might agree that a marginal amount is, necessary, and we've generated this list of ideas, and they might leave it up to Northwestern to choose which one of those that they select. I think it's also important for the record, and you made an excellent point, that the idea of probably permit fee waivers are not very palatable if we're talking about really high-style resources and those with a lot of means to already pay for these improvements. So just for the record, I think what we're discussing is that Evanston has a really high percentage of landmark properties that are called vernacular. That's just everyday resources. This is the homes that the majority of Evanstonians lived in. And very often these homes have very significant materials just because that's what people built with during this time. And it's very difficult for those property owners to meet even the preservation standards that we have because of the significant cost associated with meeting those standards as an overall percentage of their home's value. They will almost never recover that investment in the way that somebody that has a very large, high-style home would recover or maintain that investment. So I just wanted to clarify that.
I think if it's stated in the mitigations that this fund is going to go for permit fee waivers, that does seem to me that it obligates the Preservation Commission to create the program. So then at that point, we would have a conversation about who the permit fee waivers are and stuff, and perhaps look at income levels or whatever.
It could also be more, the recommendation could be more general, even that, I mean, this could be a small loan program. It could basically, we're just talking about some kind of financial incentive because the city of Evanston has no financial incentive for historic property owners. And that's a challenge that we see at this commission almost on a monthly basis. Even if it were something that this commission had the ability to say, we have X amount of money available per year, we think this project is deserving of that for various reasons in order to meet the standards or something similar. Because I think very often homeowners want to do what's right or what the standards dictate, or replace a slate roof in kind, but they're just not able to.
I think permit fees that's a great number. I mean, it's a significant amount of money. Doing something, I mean, sometimes we see folks, talk about what the difference is between different kinds of products, and it's, a few $1,000s. Well, permits for, depending on how large the project, are oftentimes a few $1,000s. So I think that's a great, way to approach this.
I mean, I just looked at Preserve 2040 and I said, okay, what are some financial, so there was the one for the legacy business and there was the permit fee and there were one or two more. But in any case.
To legacy business, does anybody happen to know what's happening to Mustard's Last Stand? Like, is it being protected? I mean, I know it's right next to the field.
It is one of the pilot legacy businesses. That program doesn't have any inherent protections.
Yeah.
But I mean, in many ways, and that's, kind of a stereotypical when you think of a legacy business.
But does anybody know? Like,
I don't.
Is it going to, withstand the demolition? Is it going to stay there?
I mean, I know that, like you said, it is a pilot business, and eventually we're going to have a new stadium probably. And my understanding was that a lot of construction workers would probably be eating at Mustard's Last Stand.
This might be very good for them, yeah.
But I'm not sure that there's any proactive and protection plan for businesses. I mean, there's even Eye Candy Salon across the street. I mean, I don't know. There's numerous small businesses along Central Street that probably need to be taken. There's probably needs to be some kind of business protection plan or whatever you want to call it, so that they're not affected. Because I know that when construction was happening on Main Street, those businesses had been slammed 3 summers in a row, and the city didn't tell them that, you know, there was anything coming. So that would probably be a good thing.
Anyway, so talking about mitigations, other thoughts? Go ahead.
I just had a thought on the permit waiver program. I personally think it should be for all homeowners for a couple of reasons. One, I think administering that program is going to take some work. I don't know where those can be more difficult than you think to actually administer it and have criteria. I think, and I say this as an alum of Northwestern, they have very deep pockets. I think there's no reason they can't fund it across the board for all homeowners. Homeowners here, and I speak as a homeowner and taxpayer, we subsidize Northwestern in terms of our property taxes because they pay none. So I think there's no reason they can't personally subsidize that entire program for all homeowners who look at renovations. Renovations have a landmark home are very expensive no matter who you are. So that's just my personal opinion.
Do you have a sense of the number or what we would base the number in?
I don't want to use the number we've pulled multiple permits, so I'm not sure we're representative of, how many permits are pulled annually. But, I'm sure we can get that data. To your point, I think you didn't have enough time, but the city's, no, and that's, I think that's available, though. I don't see any reason why we probably couldn't get that data. But my personal opinion is Northwestern should have to pony up for that program. I think it's a drop in the bucket for the money they're putting into Ryan Field and the donations that they get.
Every time that we've talked about permit fee waivers, everyone agrees it's a great idea and nobody knows how to pay for it. And so that's how that ended up in my suggestions. Anyway, other people brought things, I'm sure.
Yeah, I have some ideas for the Hibbs here, not Habs here, but Hibbs here documentation outline that they provided. I'm wondering if, because Ryan Field is 96 years old now, almost 100, not gonna make it, sounds like, but I saw that the drawings requirement is for only the original drawings. And so I'm wondering if there's also a requirement, or we could stipulate a recommendation for obtaining subsequent drawings for the modifications that have happened over its 96-year history as a record of the history, because it's different than what it is now. It's a horseshoe rather than the two sides, and that'd be nice to see. So that's one recommendation, just to kind of up the level of documentation. And then my other one, this is for, in the written data, the contextual histories. I just wanted to make sure that more than one point of view is represented in those histories, and who's telling those stories and who's telling those histories. I think that's a place where we could recommend that they obtain those histories from multiple point of views, the tribal communities, the football fans, past players, current players, the staff, alumni. I just think that it's a landmark with a little L and a big L, right? And so many people have experiences with this land, the neighbors even, talking about the crowds coming and going, the tailgaters. There's so many stakeholders related to this building that have a morsel of history that impact their lives that I think should become a part of this time capsule that is the Hibbs here documentation. And so it'd be really, I think, important to gather those multiple stakeholder point of views as wide as possible, because people are pretty passionate about this place, and I think this is the chance to document that for the kids that go do their research on that old Ryan Field 40 years from now when they go to the Evanston Historical Center or something. So yeah, just more of the drawing history of the subsequent sets, just because it is almost 100 years old. There's more than what it was originally. There's more to that story to tell in a documentation drawing set, and then just with those oral histories and those experiences, so many stakeholders. I just want to make sure it's really broad and it's not just the architectural history or not just, what is it, its other significance? Oh, as a football, its other statement of significance was that it's a football field. And so just, making sure that we capture all of that.
Yeah, that's a good point. I was thinking as you were talking that probably those contextual statements, so if an interpretive program, signage or marker or something, ends up as a mitigation, likely that text will be drawn in part from the contextual statements that the contractor comes up with for the other mitigation, right, for the recordation. So it's important to make sure that all of that kind of ties together and is as broad as possible. So that's a great thing to include in you're taking notes.
And then just one other question in general, how, this is just a question, and maybe you'll know from your professional experience. Is mitigation required before something else happens? Or what is how hard and fast is this? Like before the demolition permit is issued or before something, is there any stuff, is this mitigation gonna happen?
What is the enforcement mechanism?
Yeah, right. There you go.
So in part, that process is actually outlined in the MOA. That there will be a draft, before demolition happens and so on. But just see if it says here.
Is it before the demolition? Is that the 95% that I was talking about?
I'm just reading it here for a second to see if it says it. Okay, so in 1.f, upon officer confirmation in writing that all of the final Hibbs photographs to complete Hibbs recordation has been collected, the project may commence. So the reason why I paused is because it actually says Hibbs photographs. Yeah, the recordation of the actual building before it can move on. That doesn't say that so it allows them to continue working on the reproductions of the drawings on Mylar and the contextual statements and stuff, but the project can commence, right, if I'm reading this correctly.
That's what I was looking for. Thank you.
So,
Interesting.
yeah, and then it says upon completion of the final documentation, the owner, blah, blah. So that's the, wait, yeah. I'm sorry. The contractor shall provide and email a 95% draft to the officer for review and comment, and then the officer accepts the 95% draft in writing, incorporates the recordation comments, and finalizes the documentation, and then it goes on to who's going to receive these copies.
No, you helped me with letter F, saying that upon the confirmation in writing that all the final Hibbs photographs to complete Hibbs recordation has been collected, the project may commence. So I might just recommend that that they stipulate more than just the photographs are complete. That, some of those oral histories are documented, some of the drawings are documented, that they get a little further. The project is, upon confirmation, then the project may commence. That's a major, that's the stipulation I was looking for.
Yeah, one of the things for level 2 documentation is the architectural site, architecture/site descriptions. So those are the kind of, the idea is that if when the building is gone or the site is gone, the words can stand in for the building. So it's extremely detailed, exactly how, a full description. Some of you all that have worked for the NPS know what I'm talking about here. It's an actual description of the thing itself. It's not, doesn't talk about the history. It's literally the size, the massing, the materials. So that might actually be something that we would want the final Hibbs level 2 documentation to be finalized before the project can continue, because that's based on the existing building. Yeah, right?
Yeah.
No, I agree. It's hard to write about a building with it gone.
Right.
And when you're trying, like you said, like you're trying to document it photographically, graphically in a drawing and verbally written, you know, multiple ways you're recording this so that moving forward you have that record of the structure.
Right, I was thinking through it while I was talking, and guaranteed, because this has happened to me and everybody else who has done this work, the one photograph you need is the one you didn't take, right? Everybody knows this. And so you're sitting there trying to write a description of something that's already been demolished, and there's no photograph of that one corner or that one whatever. So if we wanted to enrich and extend that 1-F, we could add that. That would seem to me to be pretty helpful. Suggest that it be added, pardon me.
I just wanted to add to, and maybe this has been included in what we've talked about, but we've talked about land acknowledgements, and so I don't know if, you know, we mentioned plaques and different things. I mean, is that the kind of thing that would be on the building, like a plaqued land acknowledgement or something? Like, I don't know, I'm not sure how that would work, but you talked about having some stuff accessible without having to buy a ticket and go in, some historical stuff. I didn't know if there was, you know, any mention, you know, like a land acknowledgement. I don't know how else to say.
Yeah, no, I was speaking very generally, because I wanted to make sure that the contractor that they hire has the opportunity to do whatever they need. But it would be, I was imagining some kind of set of panels, like exterior grade panels, that would be at the sidewalk, either grouped together or sort of a little bit of a walking tour, where you could maybe a historic photo, like this is what it used to look like from this direction or whatever. But I just wanted to make sure it was, for me, what's important is it's publicly accessible, that you don't have to buy a ticket or have access to the building in any way in order to see but you know, I think if the tribal leaders feel comfortable putting a land acknowledgement there, but we need to ask them. I don't know if I answered your question.
Yeah, I just was wondering, you know, beyond the stadium pictures of that, if there was going to be any mention of the significance of it to, you know, the Native American people somewhere in that, you know, history, architectural history area.
Yeah, no, absolutely. The tribal leaders, yeah, I mentioned that, but I was talking quickly.
So at the meeting with multiple tribal historic preservation offices, one of the officers did bring up the idea of integrating Native American symbols or artwork or flags of some sort in the design of the stadium and other things that are on the site. But that I'm not sure where that conversation led, you know, with Northwestern, because I mean, I think they think of it as a final design, but I don't know that the tribal historic preservation offices, because they were kind of included in this process late in the game, that they're kind of trying to, you know, insert what they can when they can. So
the person who I remember that comment because it affected me deeply, and I was going to mention that in a few minutes when we get to that part of the agenda. Actually, I can't stop thinking about the way he said it, too, was very moving. But in any case, his contact information is part of the contact information that I was offering to Sarah Flax. So hopefully they feel, you know, open to participating, to giving their public feedback so that they can speak for themselves about what they want, you know, in the listening session that she was talking about.
Okay, and I missed it. Is Sarah Flax a city employee or Northwest? Okay, city. I missed
She's
that.
the Director of Community Development.
Okay, thanks.
I had just a question when we were talking about kind of archaeological work that could be done, that it doesn't sound like they're, at this point, talking about doing, that normally would be triggered by 106, but not by 707. Didn't we have a meeting where you were discussing the individuals from Northwestern, from a department in Northwestern that are already surveying using kind of X-ray vision or something?
Yeah, I don't remember the exact term now either. It's like, yeah, but yes, and he was involved in some of these conversations, and I think he's been pretty instrumental in trying to kind of coordinate these various tribal entities to come into one place and have kind of common conversations.
The person that he's referring to is also we have his contact information as well. So we'll make sure that he knows about the listening session and has an opportunity.
As far as the interpretive displays go in terms of the funding, because to be clear, they're not currently included in what's being discussed by the state. That would come from Northwestern conceivably, and then who would be in charge of carrying that out? Would that be?
That would be Northwestern's contractor. So someone with the same qualifications that I was talking about at the beginning, if I understand correctly. It would be part of the MOA and that they would
that'd be
agree to do
correct.
that. And they would handle the entire thing, except I was suggesting that they get our review and tribal review.
Yeah.
I was going to say that that's relatively common. One of the other documents that I circulated amongst you was a similar form of mitigation that the city had to go through for the Chicago Avenue project, and that has a series of interpretive elements to communicate that corridor's past and its significance, and particularly it speaks to the significance for a variety of population groups and different perspectives, and that has to be reviewed both by our commission but also by the state, and both have to approve that. So I would assume it would be a similar process.
Other comments? Anything? Tom? No.
I'm just wondering, I mean, has this been all of this discussion has been recorded and then will be sent to the State Historic Preservation Office? I'm just understanding the process for this.
It's a little bit of a challenge because of the timeline. So ideally what I would have done is create some kind of findings, a commission's findings, and I would bring it back to you so that you can approve them. It's not, due to the circumstances, it's not really possible for you to approve the findings. We're lucky that this is being recorded, so it's my expectation that the entire video will be submitted to the Preservation Office, and then I can also summarize the discussion as well.
Going forward, will this body have any involvement or any interest in pursuing this topic of the general historic value, the historic presence of that space? After construction starts, will we just go away, or we continue to find out more about for instance, the Native American involvement or any other historical value?
I think that depends largely on what they agree to and what those stipulations are. But you know, it's not atypical for the local certified local government to enforce at least aspects of these agreements. That's why you'll see in some of them that they're reviewing certain information and types of work and approving that before it's installed. So I guess it depends, but it wouldn't be atypical for this body to be involved if they chose to expand the mitigation that they're currently proposing. I don't know if that answers your question, or you mean beyond that. I mean, this body is also just generally empowered to, you know, investigate those things and on their own outside of this. You know, is that space significant?
I think that's more of what I was referring to. I'm pleasantly surprised by the level and depth of this conversation. You know, it's a lot of it's brought up a lot of what I feel are very important issues that probably should be, if the answers aren't found in by the end of the month or whatever, that there'll be a continued interest from the preservation perspective.
And especially because, especially when we're talking about the cultural heritage, the heritage of indigenous peoples, it's not exclusive to this one location. It's Evanston, it's beyond Evanston. So certainly I think it's worthy to have more conversations about this, to bring more people to the table, to hear more stories, more perspectives. There's always value in that.
One of the reasons why I happen to have the contact information for these tribal representatives is because I've been thinking about inviting them to our speaker series to tell us from their perspective, because to hear them talk about it is, as I noted, has just been a really moving thing. So I've been trying to figure out how to do that, because there's a lot of them and they live far away. They consider Evanston to be their home, but they are living elsewhere because they were forcibly removed to those locations. So I've been trying to think of how to bring them in. So any ideas anyone has would be great. But then this Ryan Field mitigation thing came up, and so then I had the contact information for them to try to help them be involved in this, or make sure that they're involved in this.
Just a question, just kind of another question about the follow-up. So will there be any public notification that the officer has confirmed in writing that all the final Hibbs photographs are complete? Is there any public notification and all right, now the mitigation is checked off, now the project can begin? Just lots of transparency.
I don't know a 100% answer to that. I am typically copied on most of their correspondence, as Carlos and I being the individuals for the city that administer the certified local government, which we're involved with. So I imagine that's not a requirement. It's probably more of a courtesy.
Okay.
But there's no, as far as I know, there's no public notification of that, unless they have a separate process where maybe they post those things.
Huh.
They're a public body as well, so they might have requirements to post things like that on their website.
Is this sort of more of a reputational thing? I mean, the contractor conceivably wouldn't want to not do their job.
The contractor that they hire?
Exactly.
Sure. Yeah, sure.
Like if they didn't do their job, then they're liable, I suppose.
Yeah, and I mean, this is really, that's what these people and these firms do, and they're really good at it, and they're really passionate about it. So no one's, just going to accept this to kind of do the minimum necessary. I think they'll take it extremely seriously. And we're lucky that there are many qualified firms and individuals that can undertake that type of work.
Yeah, so I guess just follow up then, if as staff, then you'll receive that notification, if you can just share it, and we can, record it as a follow-up item or just as a note of interest for at least one way to make it more public and just broadcast it a little bit wider.
You mean as a staff report, as part of the staff report on the next meeting? I think that's great.
Or, whenever the mitigation is complete, whenever that happens.
Yeah, I do know that, the final agreement that's made between them, that is a public document that they're required to post online. So that is not, it's not some secret document. So once that becomes finalized, that's certainly something that I would bring back to you and report on.
Okay. And I do appreciate this forum, being able to have this forum for, what are we, the consulting party? I mean, yeah, I really do appreciate this opportunity.
Well, because it's really more than just whether or not the state takes up our ideas or not. I mean, there are other voices, there are other ears. I mean, we can use the bully pulpit is strong. I mean, the conversation we had about Native folks tonight, I hope that that Northwestern hears that. And conceivably there are people in the audience right now writing down what we're saying, and they will, take it somewhere.
Yes, I was glad that it ended up on the agenda. That's all I'm going to say about that. Anything else?
I'd like to comment one more time about, I'm so impressed with your opening presentation.
Oh.
I literally had goosebumps. Thank you very much. That was, made me proud to be a part of this body. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I actually was afraid I was talking too much, but anyway, thank you.
No, I agree, and I think that, like, for the state or whoever's watching, I mean, I completely appreciated how succinct and clear all your points were, and grounded in our, preservation plans for Evanston and things that we've discussed. And so I agreed with every recommendation that you made in your opening statement. So,
Thank you. Other comments? Okay. Well, this is the end of the discussion. No vote will be taken section. It is 9 o'clock. I would like to ask if anyone would like a 5-minute break. I would. Shall we take a 5-minute break?
Sure.
Okay.
Oh, good timing.
Okay, we are going to resume. We are now at item number 6 on our agenda, reports. We are at the 2024 annual work plan development.
I'll take it from here. So the purpose of this, and it's a relatively long spreadsheet with activities, but the idea is that we've adopted the 2040 plan and that every year we will make much smaller, more digestible annual work plans to help implement this larger image and or larger plan and stay on top of it. The first thing I'd like to say, and it really reinforces what I always say, is that this body is intended to be a working group. You're not intended as just sit back passively and review cases and go home. You're supposed to really advance this larger agenda that is historic preservation. So I'd like to report on some of the things that we have done because we've only been implementing this over a 2-year period so far, and we've made significant progress, and I think we just need to keep up with it. So Initiative 1.4, conduct a citywide survey of Evanston's downtown and neighborhood business districts. This is a year 1 to 3 initiative, and its priority is high. We've made significant progress on this. So we did survey a very large and expand the survey boundaries of the downtown in 2022, 2023. I think a next step for this would be look at other business districts or corridors that have really the point of this is to identify places that have really high development potential and also have historic resources. So that's where you're going to see that conflict exist, where you see basically resources that are threatened, and you want to try to identify those before they're threatened. Initiative 1.8, integrate preservation survey and documentation as part of future city planning efforts. This one I listed as in progress because I think the Commission has a pretty significant opportunity to engage with the consultant that's putting together the comprehensive plan, and you can work to ensure that not actual surveys, but that this idea is integrated into other policies that are written. So when the city undertakes some kind of corridor, streetscape project, something like that, that they also ask that as part of that team would identify historic resources. That way, it really just helps supplement the work of this group in identifying those. Even an example of that is the Chicago Avenue multimodal project. When that went through and received an adverse effect from the State Preservation Office, the Department of Transportation, the Illinois Department of Transportation, surveyed that entire corridor, and they identified some 12 to 15 buildings that are now listed as eligible for the National Register. So that's just an example of this type of work. Prepare an annual study list of eligible resources in Evanston. This one I'm listing as in progress because I think we just started to have pretty serious discussions about this, and I know it's one that the chair would like to bring back as a discussion item to see how we can kind of formalize this process and make sure that we're consistent about how we make these decisions about eligibility, what times a year we do those surveys, making sure we contact property owners, that type of thing. Ones that we've completed, one is an initiative that was listed as pressing in year 1 to 3 to work with the Economic Development Division to enact a legacy or heritage business program. I say complete, this is nearly complete. I believe that they, and correct me if I'm wrong, Carl, but it was the end of the year they asked that it be live, the website?
Right, so the website is I guess in quality control or quality assurance right now, just to make sure that the website doesn't have bugs, but I think the goal is to launch by the end of the year, so the program will then be official.
That's wonderful.
So,
and this is, I think the reason it was listed as pressing is changing that narrative about what historic preservation is, right? So a lot of people feel like it's just physical buildings or objects. And this really pushes that narrative and say, no, it's living heritage, it's people, it's stories, it's businesses, it's all of these things combined that create this identity that is Evanston. It's what makes Evanston unique. So it makes so much sense to have a program like this in Evanston, and it was really a joy to work with that group to put it together, and I'm really excited to watch it just expand. I think it'll probably expand really rapidly. I think there's a lot of interest in the business community. They want to be a legacy business. Commissioner Cohen up here, as soon as we started talking about it, he said, well, I've had my architecture practice in Evanston for 30 years. Do I qualify? It's like, sure, of course you do. That's a great story to tell. And so I'm very excited about that. I'm very passionate about that. This one, Initiative 2.11, Benchmark Commission Accomplishments and Performance Trends in an Annual Public Report. We've done this once, and I think it was very successful to just, one, create transparency in what this group does, two, to really break down misunderstandings about what this group does, right? So the misconceptions, misperceptions that exist is that you deny everything, that you come in front of this commission and good luck, getting out of there. And that's really not true. It's something like 95% of cases are typically approved. And I don't know that we've denied a single one yet this year. We haven't had an appeal in the last couple years. And I think that's really a testament to our willingness, one, up front to work with applicants to make sure that they're prepared to submit something and they understand what the requirements are. But two, this body, you're willing to work with homeowners and you're willing to be flexible and find common solutions.
Is there any plan to turn that into some sort of a narrative and include it in the newsletter? Because that's our biggest reach, and for people to know that, hey, this isn't some scary thing. Yeah. I mean, Ken Hazlett was my architect, and when I first talked to him about possibly working on my garage, he's like, "Oh God, the Preservation Commission, you don't want to deal with them," And then we were just joking about it. So it's like, even amongst architects, there's misnomers.
Misunderstandings.
I just wanted to say that at some point we do have to talk about what's going to be in the next newsletter, and that one will be, I think, in January or something along those lines. And so that's an opportunity to do kind of a year-end review. So I've been thinking about that. The other thing that I wanted to mention, since Kate is talking about this annual report that he and I did, since we do have quite a large number of new commissioners, it might be something that you're interested in watching. It's not long. We had 5-10 minutes, and then there were some questions. So it's on YouTube. Kate, would you be open to sending the link to everybody?
Oh, to show them the previous?
Yeah, if they want to watch.
I can do that.
We did it in May.
Yeah, something like that, April or May.
We did it in April or May. And so it would have been before half of you were here, or some of you were here. So it might be of interest in the data that we presented there about the number of cases that got a yes without any conditions and all that stuff that Kate was just referencing. That's all there in the presentation, and you might find the questions from the council members of interest as well.
Yeah.
The direction of their questioning was something. So that's what you're talking about, right? The thing
and we did put it, our very first newsletter, even though it was after we had done the report, we did include it, and that was the number one thing people looked at. And I think that's great. I think they're genuinely interested. What did you do? What did it look like that, how many cases did they review? How many cases, were denied? It was relatively comprehensive. We included the common standards that led to, conditions being applied or denials.
Can we include how many ADUs we approved?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. The next one, 2.12, actively recruit future commissioners. This is an ongoing initiative. It's a high priority, but I label it as though it's been complete because, as far as I know, this was really the first concentrated recruitment effort that the commission put forward. And we're very lucky that we have, as a result, very qualified, wonderful new commissioners that are here with us right now. So I think it was very successful, and it's something that we should try to be, kind of more engaged and actively pursue the types of individuals we would like to be part of this group. Ultimately, it's up to the mayor to make those decisions, but I think, I don't want to speak for him, but I think he was refreshed that he had options. I think, very often there are limited options or no options to fill vacancies. So I think that was something he appreciated as well. Initiative 3.6, advocate for adoption of a citywide deconstruction ordinance. This one I have listed as just having early discussions. We've had internal discussions with the Sustainability Division. They asked me many months ago to give a presentation to the Environment Board that was pretty well received. And I expect that there will be opportunities to try to advance this. The key word here is that we're just advocating for it, so we're not taking that on our own. I expect that someone else would probably lead this process, but making sure that it has some kind of preservation lens to it, because it is significant in our work. And we can help implement that type of work too.
I was just going to note, since we just 2 minutes ago talked about the annual report presentation that Kate and I did, the sort of number one thing that the council members wanted to hear about was the idea for deconstruction ordinance. So there's actually a little bit of more discussion there in case anyone is interested or wasn't interested before in watching the YouTube video of that. If you're interested in the idea of deconstruction and to see how the council members responded when it was first mentioned, that's there from April.
This one, Initiative 3.10, support the retention of significant landscape features which offers citywide environmental benefits. This one, it's listed as ongoing. This is something that the commission should consistently have in their mind. You know, how do landscape features, how do trees, how are those part of what makes a property significant? You know, how are those part of its identity? The commission is you know, empowered to apply, you know, particularly the standards for alteration that apply to impacting a site's environment. We have not done that in the past, but that opportunity does exist. And there's also a lot of progress for this to be, I think, made in the future and tied to conversations about modifying the ordinance itself and maybe including additional standards for this type of work.
To that end, there's probably people on the commission who aren't totally familiar with the new tree ordinance. Granted, it hasn't come into fruition yet because they haven't hired an arborist. I don't even know if we have the money for it. But have you thought about including in your speaker series somebody, you know, Emily Kalu or somebody who can speak to that? Because I think, honestly, I mean, it comes up regularly in our conversations. Oh, there's a beautiful 100-year-old oak next to that, you know, garage. Are you going to tear it down? And like, I mean, being able to liaise with them, I think would be appropriate or useful.
So that's a great idea. Can we put them on the list? You know who to?
It's a great idea. Even a member of the Environment Board might be willing to come and speak to. You know, when I gave my presentation to them, I discussed the concept of heritage trees and their ability to, you know, tell stories and communicate, you know, past identities, and I think that was very well received. But I think the alternative is probably true too, for them to come in front of us and communicate really the environmental benefits of protecting some of these features.
And also,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
and also just the difference when the tree is in a public area versus private. Just understanding where we can land, or
I think we can identify significant trees wherever they're located, and both public and private. I think that they don't care, and they all deserve attention and protection. I'm a very strong advocate for trees. I can show you some trees in Evanston that will, but I think that if we refer to the environmental benefit of landscapes of trees, but you know, landscapes are beautiful in their own right. I think some people think of landscapes sometimes as being not as enduring as buildings, which I think is not necessarily true. You know, they touch the senses in many ways, even more than buildings. And a 100-year-old oak is a baby oak, by the way. So I think that when we talk about the benefit and the protection of landscapes, I think we need to maybe broaden our lens a little more. And
this is kind of, you know, specific, but like I think about the gates at Edgemer Court. Like, that's in one of our protected areas. Like, is there anything that would stop somebody from tearing those down? Like, let's say the city wanted to, like, would they even have to ask us?
If that's located on, I don't think that's located on city property. If it was located on city property, that's something that we would provide an advisory recommendation on. Which I believe that's located on private property, to remove that, if that removal requires a permit, then they would be required to come in front of us. I don't know off the top of my head if removing that requires a permit or not.
Yeah, I don't know.
There are gates that are landmark in Illinois, sorry, in Evanston on Ridge, where I think it was the former Patton estate was, the big iron fence along Ridge, I think is a local landmark. But
The cemetery as well, the entrance gates to the Cavalry Cemetery are specifically identified as their own landmark.
I just wanted to clarify, so it is in our, what are these standards, right? Like today, we could theoretically, like, vote down a project because they were cutting down a tree, for example. Like, that is something in today's standards, the way it's written.
Yeah, so this came up maybe 2 years ago for a new construction project, and we were advised at the time by the city's law department that you could apply standard for alteration number 2, and the reading of that says, the distinguishing original qualities or character of a property, structure, site, or object, and its environment shall not be destroyed. And they said that we could interpret that to apply it to the destruction of significant landscape features as an alteration to its environment. The clarifying point that happened during that discussion was just that this commission has never applied that standard in that way in the past, but that you did have the power to if you wanted to.
Great, and then just, sorry, one follow-up. Is it, I know there's a certain application people fill out, when they do projects. I mean, is there a way where they could, a question where they can actually fill out, like, is there any alteration to an existing landscape tree, et cetera, so that it would call our attention to it rather than,
one of the things that this body's empowered to do is to create its own applications. That's in the ordinance itself. So if you wanted to amend the applications to include something like that, it's probably a good idea. Currently, someone doesn't need a permit to just remove a tree currently. So I think that is proposed to change. But the way it works currently is that the only time you would review something like that is if it's associated with a larger construction project that is before you. But theoretically, even someone could then go back and then cut the tree down without a permit and then come back in front of you. But I think just generally communicating those things to applicants too and why they're significant, sometimes it's eye-opening for them.
So to that end, does this body have the ability to vote to change, to say add a piece to the COA?
Yeah, so it's a little unique. I don't know if you know, Sarah, but some of the commissions, the application process, they don't control their own applications. But this body, you do have its specific power within the ordinance to create and disseminate your own application forms. So that's just a process that I'd probably recommend a working group be formed or something where just 2 or 3 commissioners work on it and then bring it in front of the body and say, here are the changes that we recommend.
I mean, when's the last time anyone's reviewed the application? I mean, it seems
I don't know that question.
So Kate, you and I had a pretty extended conversation about this a few months back, but it never proceeded past anything between the two of us, and so it never came here. But I've been thinking about a few changes to the application myself. So if that is something that is also in your minds, totally independent without any words coming out of my mouth, that sounds awesome to me.
Yeah, I think that's something I'd be interested in being on a working group.
So I would say one thing we could do as homework is each of us take a look, independent of each other, anybody who's interested, have a look at what the form looks like and think about what else you would want to see in it or how you would want to modify it in some way, and then we can, create a working group. Go ahead. You were going to say something?
I was just wondering if the National Alliance of Preservation Commissions has like a, kind of like standard or like best practices of like what's the best, thing to include in an application. I mean, obviously, communities vary in their resources, and so that probably will dictate things too, but
Sure.
yeah.
And just for the record, it's power number 9 in the ordinance to prepare and distribute application forms for review of proposed alterations, construction, demolition, or relocation.
I would have to dig up, I wasn't prepared to think about this tonight. So 'cause I was prepared to think about other stuff, but I would have to dig up the list that I have about the things that I've been mulling about the application. So I would love to have a month to do that.
Carlos and Kay, just quickly, I mean, from a logistical standpoint, I mean, you know, these are available on the website. I've filled one out for my home, a few, maybe even. Is there a cost that you can anticipate to the city or to your department that would be, you know, effectuated by us changing or adding a couple of features to the application? Like, is there anything we're not thinking of?
I don't think you changing the application would incur any additional cost. I mean, we're here in large part to support you in those efforts. So if you told us what changes you want, I mean, it's relatively easy to change the form.
Just wanted to make sure we weren't like
Sure.
opening up a can of worms
Yeah,
without
sure.
realizing
Yeah.
what that would be.
My answer to you would be staff time. But I just want to just make a comment about the powers and duties of the commission. Over the years, I'm very cautious about how fast you want to move and what really is going to accomplish at the end, because what you need as a commission is the support of the community, and you need to be very strategic at how do you move forward and how fast. I think that the issue of landscaping could be very delicate, especially if the people are not necessarily informed in advance that that's going to be something that the commission is going to enforce. Now that it's been part of the ordinance, but not necessarily interpreted the way that now, you know, is intended to be. So I would suggest that if you initiate like a working group, that there is participation from the community as well, not just, you know, change the the form so that make it possible for the commission, but may not necessarily have the participation of the public. I think it's important to be transparent as far as that is concerned.
Can I suggest that we all, whoever's interested in perhaps reconsidering the form, have a look at it between now and the next meeting, and then we'll put a conversation about that on about creating a working group. Did we find enough that it would merit our time in January? Is that okay? That we,
Yeah.
Okay.
It's already in my calendar.
and then we can, the one thing that I would actually ask staff is if at that point we could have some idea about the process of actually making that change, if we have to vote, because I agree that maybe we would want to make sure that that's some draft of it is included in our meeting for like February or whatever, you know, so that there's a public transparency process.
I
So we
mean,
can talk about that in January.
Yeah, even talking to architects, like, you know, and homeowners, I mean, the language, you know, can be, you know, is a problem on its own. So like even just taking a look at the language, maybe we don't change anything substantively in lots of ways, but maybe we would just, you know, clarify language even.
Yeah, so I would say if everyone's okay with that, we'll put that on the list for, at a minimum, creating a working group, and then we'll go from there and make sure that we are informed on the process
Sure.
at that time in January.
And I think primarily the purpose of the application form is to provide you with the necessary information. So, you know, I've heard from past commissioners that they almost never looked at the application. They just looked at the set of drawings because the application didn't really communicate a lot of information that they couldn't get from the drawings themselves. So I think just keeping that in mind, and also if there are consistent gaps in the type of documentation you're receiving, you know, maybe that, you know, for example, you might even reconsider the requirement for having 3D renderings all the time. That seems like a consistent request that applicants and homeowners push back on because of the associated cost. So yeah, I think this is a worthwhile discussion.
Shall we move on to the next?
Yeah, I just have one more. The last was to Initiative 4.9 to continue to digitize and make available early publications of the commission. This is listed as ongoing. The priority level is medium, but we've made pretty significant progress on this. Not the Preservation Commission's web page, but the Historic Preservation web page. It's a little confusing. So the Preservation Commission web page is this group and this body, and then the Historic Preservation web page kind of is the preservation program generally. That has expanded really rapidly. That's changed really significantly in the last 2 to 3 years. There's a lot of additional information on there that's now publicly accessible and transparent. Most recently, we put all the statements of significance for landmark properties on there. So if you haven't looked at that in some time, it's really worth it, I think. And then I'll just finish by saying I don't need necessarily input on this right now, but the purpose of having all these initiatives in front of you is to start thinking about which of these that we've either made some level of progress but not a lot on, or initiatives we haven't started that you would like to be included in the annual work plan.
And so is the idea then in January we would vote on a work plan?
Yes, correct. Yeah, so if you give me information on what those priorities might be between now and then, I can start to find where there's commonalities between commissioners and start to prioritize some things and present a draft work plan for you to consider, and you can always amend that or as needed. And it can be ambitious. It's fine to create something that you don't meet all those goals. That's fine too. You're just, one, it's for you to hold yourself accountable, and two, it's for the public to understand what things we're trying to advance and achieve in a single year.
Real quickly, I have a question. I noticed that you used to be able to do cityofevanston.org/preservation or /historic preservation, and they would redirect to the 2 pages, and I don't think that that's working anymore. And that's just like an accessibility thing. That's just an easy way for the public to just type in preservation or historic preservation after the city website and get directed quickly to the pages.
I just had a quick question about the webpage. Are the newsletters available online now?
They're not, but that's a wonderful, they definitely should be, and we can do that. That's a wonderful suggestion.
Great.
Okay, were there any other questions for staff about the work plan or so right now we have for January to vote on the 2024 work plan, and also to consider creating a working group to rethink the application a little bit. Okay.
I'm just curious, Kate, when people in the public contact you, or Carlos, when they contact you, do you get any particular feedback from not necessarily architects like me, but just anybody that's in a house, in a home that would be going through this process? What are the most common, just curious, what are the most common questions or things that might influence what not just what we need to see, but like would make it clearer for them?
Yeah, I think for me the most common one is pushback on the requirement for 3D renderings. I think for the type of work that come before this commission, it's usually architects that are pretty used to the process, and I don't have a lot of problems. Where we see more problems are for the minor work COA application that just gets submitted with a building permit, where I would say, geez, half of the time, maybe a little bit less, they submit it, but it doesn't have any information on it. And I don't know if that's it seems to lend itself to that being a problem with the application, perhaps, or even something deeper about them not understanding what that document even is and what it's supposed to be doing and why. I know that I have had multiple applicants say that it would be nice to just have one application for all certificates of appropriateness and not have to search for a minor and major, or know when to include which one. So we could consider that, but other than that, I don't know that I've had a lot of comments on the major work COA application.
I think that's great to remember there's actually 2 applications that we could be looking at. Three applications.
Windows and doors.
Windows and doors. So there's a veritable buffet of application goodness, if anyone is interested.
Well, I can give a little bit of background on the 3 applications. It's because in the past, we have one that many people thought it was too long. And it was too cumbersome. Just if you want to apply for Windows, why do I have to provide all this information? Do I even read the information? So we did the minor and major. And then for Windows, it was included in the general, but people missed information, and so we had to create something that would be exclusively for window replacement, because then they don't get distracted with everything else. The problem really is how much information is necessary, and to be honest, depends on the character of the commission that I was under at the time, because they felt that they needed this and that, so incorporate that. But this is a different body, and you can obviously modify the needs of this commission, but still maintain the spirit of the ordinance, not deviate from what the ordinance says, but maybe develop forms that help you better to review projects. The pushback I have is about window restoration or replacement. My experience is that restoration is really not what the public is expecting one to do. I would say 90% of the time they don't want to think about it. Just my windows are too drafty. I don't have any contractor that wants to replace 10 windows. They want to replace hundreds of windows at a time. And we know that. It's a fact. So it's constant, the frustration that Kay and I have when we don't get information that we need to make decisions or send it to the commission. It's very difficult.
Well, certainly, thanks, Carlos. We take into account the actual staff input as well, what they need. So it's clearly a bigger conversation. Are we done with the 2024 work plan development report? Okay. So the next one under reports is B, the Tribal Historic Preservation Officer visit. This can be relatively short because, first of all, I don't want to put words in their mouths, and also we are hoping to have them here as speakers at some points, then you'll be able to see. But I didn't want to have a meeting without talking about this, at least let you know what it was. So this was a visit that Northwestern organized, Northwestern Native-focused Northwestern faculty and staff organized, and it had been on the schedule for a while. With the tribal historic preservation offices of the tribal nations whose land Northwestern and Evanston traditionally sit on. And then after it was organized, the Ryan Field situation came up, and so that was added to the introductory meeting agenda. So it wasn't, the meeting wasn't about that, it was added to it. But the bigger goal, and it was a 2-day meeting, visit, of which there was this 1.5 hours, something like that, 2-hour introductory meeting that was fairly large. In any case, so I went, Commissioner Klein was there from the commission, and my personal feeling was that that I wanted to just listen, so I introduced myself, and then I actually didn't talk or ask questions or anything. I just wanted to hear what they had to say and how they said it and what was important to them and so on. And from my perspective, I heard them say 3 things that were very moving. One was that they consider, and I've said this a little bit in the meeting today, but anyway, that they actually consider Evanston their homeland. So even though, like, there was one guy who was on Zoom in Oklahoma, Tribal Historic Preservation Officer. So even though he was in Oklahoma, he considers Evanston to be his home. So they talked about being a long way from home. And that really was, and it wasn't just him, it was everyone talking like that. So that's something to keep in mind, that we actually have Evanstonians, we'll say, or like people who consider this land to be, that they feel that they are part of this community, even though they don't physically live here. So that's something that's been on my mind, and I've had a couple of weeks to process it, so I'm just gonna let you guys process that. Another thing that I heard them say was that we need to really work to deserve their attention. We don't just get it when we ask. Like, that's not, it's not, you know, they have valuable information and history, and we need to be worthy of that. And then the other thing was what came up earlier that we were talking about the visual representation. And as a visual person myself, I found this set of ideas pretty moving about the idea that if they were to come here and see the symbols of their community incorporated into buildings, that would actually be very meaningful to them. At one point, somebody said that, you know, they would be happy to bring their children to see this building because they would be able to look up and see the symbol of their nation incorporated into buildings here, so that they're acknowledged and feel that that their voice is being heard, but that the visual representation really matters to them. And in fact, I got the business cards from the tribal leaders who actually were able to physically come here, as opposed to the folks that were on Zoom, and they all had their tribal symbol on their business card, the way that I suppose anyone from Evanston would have the city seal or whatever. This was very important to them, and everyone was wearing their, you know, traditional clothing and so on. And so it was, I think that these are things to keep in mind. So I just wanted to, I didn't want to have a meeting without mentioning it, but those were the things that I heard that were meaningful to me that I wanted to summarize for you all. And I do hope that we are able to get them to come and to speak on their behalf so that you can hear it too. So that's my report.
Well, I think it's just important to say that all the tribes that were represented at the meeting said that they were not there individually, they were there collectively as designees of their nation, and that you can't just speak to one person individually. When you're talking to them, you're talking to them as a designee of an entire nation. And that they kept repeating that this isn't just talking to an average person, this is talking to almost an international conversation, the United States and the nation, another tribal sovereign nation. And the concept of sovereignty came up too, and respecting that sovereignty and their ties to the land. And their hope and prayer is that moving forward, this will be a fruitful relationship that can move forward in many different ways. So, yeah.
Right. Yeah. I would. I mean, in the write-up for this section, you know, it says developing long-term collaborative relationships around preservation best practices and native-focused research. That text actually came from the meeting agenda. Like, that was actually what they were there to talk about, and so there was a lot of conversation. You know, dominated the conversation. Actually, they were more interested in that than anything else, in talking about future collaborations and how we can move forward together. They can be part of the conversation, just generally. Yeah.
Well, I guess, is that one way of saying that we will have to deal with the Harley Clark property at some point in the future?
So that actually came up when part of this meeting was an opportunity for the natives to visit the stadium site. And so they actually, I think later on, I didn't attend, but they did attend the lighthouse park, as well as kind of the whole park area around. And I believe it was the Tribal Historic Preservation Officer from the Prairie Band that basically claimed that as part of their land. And they're actually actively involved with the state legislature as well as Congress to try to get a plot of land given back to them in DeKalb County, and so possibly, I don't know, what about the Evanston locations, but that came up, so.
I'm a little confused because it sounded like when we were talking about the mitigation stuff that the tribal leaders hadn't been consulted, and then it sounds like this meeting, they were in attendance at, like, or Northwestern invited them. So I don't understand the disconnect. Like, they're not included in that contractors, their feedback's not there, but yet Northwestern had them to campus or,
So there's
virtually?
two different processes going on. So there's the MOA and then there's the 707 stuff. So that's.
Well, at the meeting, the native, all the tribal historic preservation offices were requesting consultation. It's up to Northwestern if they want to enter into consultation or not. The tribes are saying that this meets the level of federal Section 106 consultation. That's their interpretation. It's up, and I guess the state and Northwestern have a differing view, but that's what they were requesting, so.
But this MOA is coming up because the Ryan Field needs a permit from one of the state agencies. So that's what's triggering that.
Perhaps we'll help to understand what motivated Northwestern to invite the nations to this meeting, and what was the main topic before they included the stadium.
Right. So the main topic was the Native focused research and collaboration. So things like student exchanges between Northwestern and the Native, where the tribes are currently living. Working together on grants in order to do research on, I think one of the things they were researching was wild rice, like scientific stuff. So that was actually the main point of this 2-day meeting. And it had been on the schedule for a while. And then the Ryan Field thing was added. But it wasn't the main focus of the conversation.
So is the Ryan Field piece how you got involved, or would you have done this on your own?
I don't actually know how I ended up being invited.
Yeah, so the individual from Northwestern first reached out to me with this general idea that he would like to almost act as a liaison of sorts between these efforts and these various tribal nations. And that comes through some of his work as almost a compliance officer for the university when they undertake large research projects to make sure that they're in compliance with federal laws, and they're consulting with these tribes if they're doing anything on their land or any kind of native focused research like that. And I think his background, he was very enthusiastic with this body and this commission and using them as a resource. It is somewhat of a logical group to come to kind of entrust some of these ideas and these concepts with. And so that's how both Chair Dreller and Commissioner Klein got involved.
I mean, we're actively talking to him about, like, even today, I think we got an email from him. We got an email from him a couple of hours ago, Kate and I, about collaborations that we could do just completely separate from Ryan Field. So that's the reason why I wanted to stay quiet during the meeting, is because I actually just wanted to give them an opportunity. And the only reason why I'm summarizing it for you is because I wanted you to know what had happened.
I don't understand, the people who attended this meeting, were they people who were interested in historic preservation or in wild rice? I mean, who?
Right, so they are the designated representatives for these tribal nations that came to Evanston or participated via Zoom to have conversations with faculty at Northwestern and the inclusion staff at Northwestern about how to have a closer relationship between Northwestern and their nations. That was the idea, and there were a lot of different ideas being discussed, including student exchanges and things like that. There's a lot of different ways that the tribal nations can connect with Northwestern and vice versa. So Northwestern has like programs that are Native focused,
So-
research and
So
stuff.
there's let me get this right. There's the Center for Native American and Indigenous Research, which is shortened to CNARE, and that, I think, is I guess, the main focus of what the second half of this meeting was about, was more the education, research, all of the academic parts of it, and which I guess fall under what a Tribal Historic Preservation Office does. They not only deal with their cultural resources, their preservation work, but they're also involved in education and other things like that. So I guess that's where that part came in.
And then all of a sudden, the Ryan Field thing came up, and so as a result, it was added to the agenda, but it wasn't the main thing. So anyway, I don't want to be paraphrasing what they said too much. I just wanted you all to know what happened and wanted you all to have a sense of the things that I heard, like the top 3 things that I heard that were meaningful to me. And the hope is that we will have them come, and then you can hear what they have to say, and then whatever they say would be meaningful to you, and it might not be the same thing that's meaningful to me and whatnot.
Sorry, I just wanted to say one thing. I'm just a little perplexed that Northwestern has this sort of academic focus on tribal, Native studies, yet, and they had a meeting and they know who to contact, they know who the folks are, yet they're not included in this, these mitigation,
I don't think we can say that. I don't think we know that.
Okay, okay.
I think that they may very well have been included and reach out to them. I just don't know.
I kind of thought that's what we were talking about earlier, that they were.
I think we want.
So they might have? But we
We're
just
saying that if they
Okay.
haven't been, we want them to be.
Right.
I don't know if they
I
have been
see.
or not, because
Got
I'm
it.
not part of this.
Okay.
And then that's what I was saying earlier, that I tried to
Yeah.
rush through writing an email to them, and it felt
Oh, to
wrong
understand
to
if they
give
were
them 10 hours.
engaged.
Right,
I got it.
right. But
Okay.
they're gonna have we're gonna try to get
Yeah,
them an
okay.
opportunity if they haven't
Well, that
already.
would be a good outcome if we found out they were actually part of the process and we just weren't aware of it.
So that is the end of that part. I just wanted to say thank you to Commissioner Sullivan for being on the commission and for your thoughtful comments in the time that I have been here. We will miss you. And if you wanted to say anything, now's your opportunity.
I feel like I'm leaving it in great hands. I thank you for the opportunity for letting me be on the commission, and Carlos reached out to me years ago and brought me in, and it's been a wonderful experience, and I'm excited to watch from citizen level and, and see the exciting things going forward.
I'm going to say the same thing to you that I said to others who just left recently, that we do have an associate, some kind of associate thing. So, don't be a stranger. Thank you so much for your comments. All right. I would like to adjourn the meeting. It is 9:59 p.m. Thank you very much. And we will see each other in January here.